Thank you very much. Can we get a little more light?
I'm working on it.
Okay, working on it. I am Dr. Smith, but around here, people who know me as D. Smith. And so actually what I'd like to do first is to have people move up a little closer, especially those of you. Jacob, right? Come on up. So, and I really wanted to do it, I'm actually glad that there's a small group here, because for me it's going to be a lot easier to have a conversation than with a large group. And so I just have a few things that are on my mind today that I want to share. But before I share the things that are actually on my mind, I want to talk a little bit about what the last 24 hours or so have been like for me. All of you know pretty much what the last 67 days or so in the area have been like. But I've been in the midst of a very wonderful thing on the campus of St. Louis University for the past 2 days. In the very early morning hours of Monday, around 2 in the morning or so, there was a large group of people who entered SLU's campus and occupied it. And I wanted to say people as opposed to saying protesters, because among the people, there were SLU students among the people, and so to simply call them protesters would just does not tell the truth about the kind of community that was there. And so they entered around 2 o'clock on Monday morning, and there are folks who are still out there who've been out there at the clock tower on the campus of St. Louis University since early Monday morning, and through all the rain and the wind and the tornado watches yesterday. There have been people out there. Last night there were at least 300 plus students out on the campus engaged in a very wonderful discussion in a space that to me felt very safe and productive, because in that moment, if you've all, a number of the images that we've all seen over the past 62 days seem almost always to involve people in confrontation with each other one way or another. And without regard to the side, you occupy on this issue, most of those images have been, it's like protesters on one side, police on the other, or people on one, people supporting Mike Brown on one side and people supporting Darren Wilson on the other side. And they've almost always been these, we get the sense that they're confrontational, that they're simply lines, and that none of our communities cross those lines. But I think it's really important for all of us, and what I've been able to witness in the last 2 days is to see how community really crosses lines in really unexpected ways. Among the things that have happened on the campus of St. Louis University, which, as you all know, is a campus that sits in the heart of our city, there are at least 3 young black men who are sitting on campus now, who are occupying campus. And when I see them, I see the figures that I see all the time. I see their descriptions match virtually every description of crime that comes across my email on the campus of St. Louis University. And when many people think about sending their children to urban campuses, the figure that becomes the most frightening figure for many of those is that guy. And you all know that guy that I'm talking about. If I say thug, almost all of us as Americans conjure up a guy who is young, who is black, who has a particular style of dress, probably has an earring, maybe has shorter locks, but has some kind of frightening natural hairstyle, like the one I'm wearing. And that figure often strikes fear in many of us. And when I say many of us, I'm not just talking about white people or white women. I'm talking about those guys themselves strike fear within each other, right? But we've had this wonderful experience for the past 2 days. Instead of there being confrontation on the campus of St. Louis University, there's been sanctuary, refuge, and conversation. And I've seen any number of conversations between these guys that many of our students normally are warned away from, out there at the clock tower on St. Louis University's campus. I've seen some of our students who went to high school in South County talking to young men who have not ever had the opportunity to go to college, and to hear the kinds of intellectual discussions that are happening in that space serve as a reminder to me. It's a thing that I always want to believe in deeply. Serve as a reminder to me that intelligence and intellect is not a matter of formal education. And that people who look and act and believe profoundly different things than we do are always capable of instructing us and informing us. And so I've had the opportunity to see that in the last 2 days. So all of y'all who are on Twitter, on Facebook, and some of you are my Facebook friends and maybe Twitter followers. As you do your social media, do the hashtag Occupy SLU and look for hashtags that say Occupy SLU so you can see an important kind of transformative thing that right now is a relatively low profile event, but it's an important kind of transformative conversation that's happening right in the middle of our city on a major university campus. So that I ask you, and that was my commercial, that was not my wow speech, right? So now to talk about the things that have been on my mind, because that wasn't on my mind at all, that was just passing through. I think about words of wisdom, and I decided to actually take it a little bit literally, right? And as I was walking through the house, I was asking myself, what are the most important words of wisdom to me? And so I want to walk you through ones that I think are important, and for me that I think work kind of chronologically for me in my life. As I try to become a better person, as I try to make the world better, it's like I'd like to think about these things in this order. And the first word really is love. It's like, for me, that's just the most fundamental. I mean, it sounds all wishy-washy and all, corny and heartfelt and all of that. And yes, I mean all of that. I mean every bit of that. I mean that kind of love that's about romance. I mean that kind of love that's about me and Swarley and Lucky, my two absolutely wonderful, adorable, beautiful, perfect dogs. About my love for my 3 daughters. That was just weird too, wasn't it? That I mentioned my dogs before my daughters. But I wanted to, it's like I wanted to be that. But it's also about my love for what's that big Gouda burger from Fozzie's, right? It's like you know the one I'm talking about. The Juicy Lucy. Yes. Right. It's like, so it's about love. It's about love for everything and everybody. So it starts at that most mundane, sappy, wishy-washy level, and it works its way up to really having a love for everything, a love for the ground that I walk on, a love for the air that I breathe, a love for the canopy that's above me at night, whether it's cloudy or star-filled, a love sometimes for the weather that I hate absolutely more than anything I can imagine. Those hot, muggy St. Louis summer days where it's like 90 degrees and 95% humidity, one of the most uncomfortable feelings, but finding a way to love even that set of conditions, and then to work its way up through how we handle our relationships with each other at every imaginable social level. James Baldwin is a writer who's been deeply on my mind for the last month or so, maybe the last 2 months. And there's a wonderful quote of his in The Fire Next Time, in the opening essay of The Fire Next Time, as he's talking about integration. He says this, he says, if the word integration means anything at all, it means that we, with love, will force our brothers to see themselves as they are. And when you talk about love at that level, it no longer sounds all wishy-washy and sappy and happy and nice, but at that point it sounds really difficult. That there's a way in which we need to love each other, and particularly those people with whom we're in conflict. And if you are one of the marginal and oppressed people, to look at the people and institutions that are responsible for that and find a way to love them to clarity, so that the transformation, the transformative power of love is not simply about the change of the self, but a change of others, and that it works, that it moves with power. I love the way that he says, we will, with our love, we will force. We won't ask, we won't implore, but with our love, we will force our brothers to see themselves as they are. And that quote actually brings me to my second word of wisdom, clarity. One of the things, after I've decided to love everything, there are moments it's just like I go through this thing, there's all this stuff firing off in my head, I'm distracted by, like the last 2 days have been just like a whirlwind in my head because I'm trying to do some things for work, trying to take care of family things, trying to understand what's unfolding on my campus, what's unfolding in my neighborhood. Someone's calling me on the phone and someone's texting me, and there's just this big jumble of stuff in my head, and every now and then I actually literally grab my head and shake it to try to clear away space so that I can see things clearly, so that I can see things for what they are. And it's important to have that kind of clarity, because without clarity, our love is misdirected. Right? So not only, it's like we often think about our hate, we often think about a lack of clarity and ignorance being a source of hate, but a lack of clarity is not only a source of hate, but it's a source of misdirected love. If we don't see things clearly, we don't know how to love them properly. And so if I'm going to create love, if I want to love things, if I want to love everybody, if I want to love the ground that I walk on, I have to be willing, even if it takes your love forcing me, I have to be willing to see myself and to see things as they are. I think this is terribly important for many of your generation, because there's this wonderfully polite thing that seems to be happening in our culture. We believe that everything, if I say I like this, then somebody has to say I don't like this. We have to create that balance. It always has to be 50-50. We have to act as though every argument and every opinion is equally valued. But sometimes real clarity should let us know that not everything is of equal value. After he's kind of made these arguments, there's this moment he has this realization in the speech. He says, why am I even arguing? It's like, why am I creating a rational argument about ending slavery? Because everyone I talk to doesn't want to be a slave. I've never met anyone who wants to be a slave, so when I create an anti-slavery argument, who am I talking to? And at that moment, he realizes, he says, at this time, we don't need rational argument. We need scorching irony and withering sarcasm and stern rebuke. And there's a moment, clarity says, you know what? This is not an argument that I will entertain. It's like, I am not going to argue to you that domestic violence is evil. I am not going to entertain a rational argument that women are not equal to men. I'm not going to argue that. If that's your position, I need to see with clarity that there is no need for me to advance a rational argument at certain moments. When there's rationality, when there's possibility of real discussion, it's like that needs to happen, but there's certain moments with clarity you need to realize and understand, I just need to talk about your mama right now. So instead of having the argument, we're going to do some scorching irony, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. I'm going to bring the fire instead of the light. I'm going to bring the whirlwind. And when I say that, these are images that come out of Frederick Douglass's 1854 speech. And I would dare say, one of the things I like to imagine now, that if Frederick Douglass were alive, he would be on The Daily Show. Yeah. Right? Because he says that when he looks at certain things, if it's time for scorching irony, it's like he's not going to be running for office. He's going to be on The Daily Show pointing out truths that don't need to be argued. Second word, clarity, right? After I get love and clarity, for me, that's the time I really need to engage in introspection. And I shouldn't engage in introspection until I first decided to love everything, self included, and until I can see with clarity. Because if I can't see with clarity, I know myself, I am deeply prone to dysfunctional, self-destructive types of introspection if I'm not seeing the world clearly and if I'm not loving things the right way, self-included. And that, I'm sure, well, I'm gonna guess that's resonating with some of you who are high school juniors and seniors now, and you're at Clayton, and there's this high bar of expectation of where you should go to school, what your SAT, ACT scores should look like, what are the things on your resume. It's like, how am I gonna deal, how do I tell my parents or tell my friends that I actually don't wanna go to Harvard or Princeton, that I'd actually be much better, be happier at Webster or at St. Louis University or something or other. And when you look at yourself without clarity and with the wrong kind of love, you're measuring yourself by other people's standards, and you see yourself as a failure when that's not anywhere near close to the case. So you need to have love and clarity first. And then when you engage in introspection, when you engage in honest introspection, then you can begin to see the role that you play in all of the relationships, in all the love relationships of your life. That's the moment I can determine whether or not I'm doing the best thing in this set of relationships, or whether or not I'm actually the problem in the relationship. And that's hard to admit sometimes. I know it's been hard for me to admit. It's like whenever relationships go foul, it's like I would really much prefer that it's always the other person and not me. It's like, I do not want to be that person in the relationship, right? It's like, yeah, does that make sense, right? Y'all with me? Okay, all right. So that's why introspection is absolutely necessary, so that I really understand my role in things. And I'll know when, I'll know that there are moments, bye Lindsay.
Heidi Smith.
I'll know that there are moments, it's like I'll know that there are moments then when I should speak up, and there are other moments when I should shut up. One of the things that's been kind of fun to me over the last 24 hours as I've watched some of these conversations take place among SLU students and these guys who are not college educated at all. I've heard some conversations develop, and there have been moments the professor in me wants to jump in and intervene because I know some things that these kids don't know. But then I had to make a decision multiple times yesterday to say, okay, no, dude, back off. It's like, it's not the time for you to be Dr. Smith in the middle of that conversation. It's like, my desire, my ultimate aim out in front of that clock tower is to help and to make the world a better place. And that meant that there were many times yesterday I had to really rein myself in and not say anything. And good introspection allows me to be okay with that. Last two words, not counting the conjunction in between, fun and adventure. It's like after you do all that, you gotta have fun in life. You gotta go out on adventures. A favorite poem of mine, Long Gone by Sterling Brown. And actually, I forgot, there's one more word. There's a poem by Sterling Brown called Long Gone, and at one point in it, it's about this guy who describes himself as a railroad man. He's in one place, and then he wakes up in the middle of the night, he decides, I gotta go. It's like, and in the poem, he tells his lover there, he says, it's like, it's not your fault, I'm not unhappy with you, but it's like, I gotta highball through some places I ain't never been, I gotta see some people I ain't never seen. And it's like, that should be your motto. It's like, wherever you've been, go somewhere else. Whoever you know, get to know somebody else. There's like way too many people on the planet for you to ever be satisfied with the number of people that you know. Far too many places for you to ever be satisfied with all of the places you've been. There's always one more interesting place. There's usually one more, unless you've met me, there's always a more interesting person. So see, that's the moment for clarity and introspection, right? But life is about fun and adventure is, again, it's like they don't have to be huge, they don't have to be simple. I mean, adventures can be political, they can be religious, they can be cultural, they can be large, they can be small, they can be as mundane as doing this thing I did a few weeks ago, or later this last summer, and I wish I could tell you the story in the exact language that it occurred. But I decided to go from my South City neighborhood to this joint in North City, Country Girl's Kitchen, which supposedly has these great pies, but they also sell fried bologna sandwiches. And I was like, dude, I'm going, it's like Saturday afternoon, I jump in my wife's cute little Scion and I drive down Union Avenue into the hood, because there's a nice little hood joint on the corner, and I'm wearing my, probably some plaid cargo shorts and a polo shirt with hair like this, and then I walk in and I order a fried bologna sandwich. And there's this guy, and again, all black, so it's like all black people, and I'm probably the whitest person in the joint at the time. And he hears me order my bologna sandwiches, and he starts to cuss me out. And he tells me, he's like, so-and-so couldn't give me a bologna sandwich. And for the entire time that I waited for my bologna sandwich, this guy went on a diatribe about why he'd never eat a bologna sandwich, that a bologna sandwich is not a delicacy, and that because he wouldn't eat a bologna sandwich, and he would also not wear jeans, and he would not even wear penny loafers, he'd only wear slacks. And I'm thinking, man, all this for like bologna and 2 pieces of white bread. It's like, whoa, what an adventure among my people, right? So I have never been, and it was just, and I've told you this, right, Justin? Did I tell you the bologna story?
Yeah, I've heard this. Yeah.
Yes. And the language that this guy used was so foul, but it was so colorful, and I'm like, wow. Like, who knew that going to get a bologna sandwich could be such an adventure? And there was a great bologna sandwich. Actually, it was 2. One with cheese, one without. So it was a culinary adventure and a cultural adventure. So they can be really, really small, mundane things, but that's about it's in a neighborhood I don't live in, it's a place I'd never been, and I've been back since because the bologna sandwiches are great. And so fun and adventure, you have to do it. You have to do it because life is too short. That's a real old head thing to say. Life is too short, so have a good time. But fun and adventure have to be a part of life in order for it to feel meaningful enough, where you should have enough fun that makes you happy to get up every day. One of the great models of my life is from the Toys R Us ad campaign that said, I don't want to grow up, I'm a Toys R Us kid. And that's been my life motto. I don't want to grow up because I always want to be that Toys R Us kid. I also never want to work a day in my life, and by that I mean I don't want to wake up and do something that feels like a burden, that feels like I have to do this so that I can get to my life. And the last few days I've been living that thing. It's like somebody's, it's like y'all aren't paying me for this, but it's like the people who write my evaluations and recommendations, they're like, oh, do that, you're speaking at Clayton? Good. So it's like they're paying me for this, and my children here know that I come here and do this just because it's fun. If there were only 2 or 3, if there was only Brenda here, I'd stand here and do the same thing because it's fun and an adventure for me. Last word, repeat. So, love, clarity, introspection, fun and adventure, repeat. Because by the time you've gone through that, by the time you've done all of that, you'll have found a new way to love, new things and new people to love, and that means now you got to get new clarity, and you got to do introspection again so you can go have some more fun and adventures, and then repeat. That's what I got. Yes?
How did you choose those words?
How did I choose those words? I just listened to my head. It's like I was walking around. And on one level, I wasn't listening to this song as I found those words, but I was listening to it on the way here. There's this wonderful song by Nina Simone that's, the title is Who Am I? And so for me, it was about asking myself the question, who am I and who do I want to be and how do I get there? Right? It's like, and I had to ask myself, what are the things that really resonate with me as being the most important things in life? So I tried to just listen to that one of those voices in my head that tells me who I am. So those were the words that resonated most with me.
From these like recent experiences at SLU, like what have you learned that like the students have picked up on the most? Like what have they taken from it?
One of the things that I think they've picked up the most is that these guys who normally look like who they've been taught to view as menaces are simply people like themselves. As a matter of fact, right before I left campus, the weirdest thing was I was talking to one of these guys who's it's like, I don't know if Stephen had even graduated from high school, but I know he's not going to college at all. But these guys were talking about planning something like a study break on the quad for SLU students. You know, and the things that we were talking about doing for the study break. And now you got to imagine like a really thuggish looking black dude, right? You know, I mean, with a cigarette in his hand, you know, just a real tough posture, talking about, like we were asking him what, you know, supplies that we needed for the day, and he was like, sidewalk chalk. Sidewalk chalk and double Dutch ropes. Right? And it's like, and if you see that dude, you would never think, oh, this is a guy who I would say, you got any sidewalk chalk or double Dutch ropes? Right? And so in the moment that happens, I learn from him, he learns from me, and he learns because as we were talking about doing something social, it's like, well, the SLU students are right in their midterms, and it's like, okay, well, we want to, you know, make sure we have a good party on Friday night, and it's like, in the meantime, we want to play some game. I mean, like, they want to play games. They want to play hopscotch and jump double Dutch and do sidewalk chalk drawings at the clock tower at SLU. That is not the dude you think he is, right? And if you don't talk to him, you never know that. So I think there have been a number of conversations where people are beginning to find that out about each other, and they're finding out the same thing about SLU students because at one point I was talking to these guys, and they keep asking, and it's like, are people okay with this? And they want to know what SLU students think. And I was talking to a SLU student, a young white woman from the Midwest, first-year student, who said to me last night, when asked, it's like, what do you think about their presence on campus? And she said, it's a blessing. And so to put those two people together in a conversation makes them realize that what they were looking at in that person over against them was not at all what that other person was. So here's a double Dutch guy who's looking at, you know, he's the double Dutch guy, but he looks for all the world like a thug. And she's a short white girl who looks like she should be afraid of this guy, and she calls him a blessing. You know, and so for those people to discover each other means that, that's just like, for me, that's like one of the most amazing things, you know, that I see coming out of this.
All right, I've known Dr. Smith for several years now, and I love him to death, by all those many meanings of the word love. And I have a question, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot too much. Because I've been thinking about you and your family a lot these last few weeks. And if you don't know it, Dr. Smith and his wife, Rochelle, have 3 beautiful, talented, intelligent, successful young women who live in New York. Are you glad you had girls instead of boys?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. And actually, it's like, I'm glad you asked that question because I have this weird kind of geeky head of, you know, processing everything. After my oldest daughter was born and Rochelle was pregnant the second time, people will always come to me, going for a boy this time? And I was always asking, like, why is that a question? It's like, do you think I'm like dissatisfied with the first model I got? You know, it's like, what's wrong? I mean, why would I want another model since this one's like so absolutely great and perfect? And so I kept asking, and then when I gave that response, people would then say, oh, as long as it's healthy, right? And then for a moment I said, and then I thought for a moment, I was like, no, not even then, because it's been my experience. It's like, I thought, you know what, from what I've seen of parents who have kids with special needs love them even more and put in more work. So at that point I would just go, no, that's not even the issue. It's just like, it's just already I have a deep, abiding love of whoever this individual is that Rochelle is carrying. So for me, it's like, why would I ever want anything other than these three absolutely beautiful, wonderful human beings that I have who are my daughters? You know, so for me, it's like, the easy answer is like, yes, I'm so glad I had daughters. Not as opposed to instead of sons, but because for me, it's just been like it's been one of the happiest things of my life. And it shaped me. It's a thing that shapes me into being a different kind of man. I think one of the things, I think I was predisposed to be a feminist before my daughters were born, and I was headed in that direction. Even if I'd had sons, I'd have wanted to raise my sons as feminists, but being a father of daughters has made me even more sensitive and more agitated about gender issues. My oldest daughter is gay, and it's made me even more agitated and sensitive about LGBT issues, right? Because that's my child. It's like, Lauren is my boo, because that's what we called her, right? So, you had a question, very early.
I was just going to ask more about the discussions between the people who came early Monday morning to SLU and the students. Like, you keep talking about these discussions, but I wanted to really know what they were about.
The most contentious kind of discussion that developed yesterday revolved around the American flag. So the guys who came and occupied campus actually displayed an American flag, an upside down American flag, right at the clock tower. And as the course of the day passed, there were any number of students who would come and confront them and express displeasure, full-on disagreement, and there were hard conversations that happened in that space, right? So there were moments, there were these really hard conversations. The best one was one of the early ones in the afternoon, when it was this guy Jaroba and a white female student from SLU, and as they discussed it, and she expressed her displeasure, she went and got another American flag and planted it in the same spot, near that flag. And as she came to plant it, they made way and made space for her to plant that flag. And so in that spot, there are still two flags being displayed. One is displayed upside down, and the other is displayed, in the proper, display for the flag. And both of them are standing there as modes of dissent, right? Because the first one was there as placed in dissent, and then the second one that's displayed properly was placed there as an act of dissent against that first one. And so for me, that's a very beautiful moment to see that kind of conversation where they can fully disagree, have that conversation, and have it in a way. It's like when you saw the pairing of this guy Jaroba and the white female SLU student, it looked for all the world like something public safety should intervene in, because it was not, a nice, polite, civil conversation, right? So it was a very agitated conversation. Later that evening, there was like a group of about 12 to 15 white guys who looked like they might have been part of an athletic team at SLU, ended up surrounding it was all about the flag. Some of them wanted to actually take away the upside down flag. And at one point, they were surrounding this one guy in the middle, but all they did for about an hour was talk. And they got really contentious. The groups walked away without agreeing, but you could see the circle get tense, and then at one point in the conversation, it just relaxed. And so there was a space, and for me it was like, it's about seeing a a safe space that is also a democratic space. And my favorite chant that I've heard, it's like, I think it's my favorite chant, and will probably be a mantra of mine in a number of places now, is this is what democracy looks like. And what it looks like is there are moments it's unorganized, there are moments it's messy, there are moments where everyone is at loggerheads with each other. It doesn't have to be neat and nice and polite and not offensive. And in that space, there are all these voices. And then last night when they had the big group discussion, those dissenting voices got the mic and had the megaphone, and there were moments that hard conversation. I saw that hard conversation in 3 different forms yesterday. So I saw it in a conversation that was kind of like a one-on-one conversation. I saw it in another one that was kind of like a 12-on-2 conversation, and then it happened in a setting that was much more like a town hall setting. And today, those guys are still on campus. The SLU students are still walking by. Some are joining, some are not. But I'm like, that is what democracy should look like, because there's severe dissent, but then the next day, everybody got up and did their thing. And so when those kinds of conversations happen, and for me, that gets back to the idea of like fun and adventure. Adventure means I got to go someplace. It's like if I go someplace and talk to people who don't think like me, don't look like me, don't eat like me, don't dress like me, I'm going to learn something from them, even if I never agree with them at all.
He made a comment saying you were like the whitest guy in there. Like, could you like elaborate like on the comment a little bit?
Yes.
Like, I know it's like a joke. Like, I just wanted to like get.
Actually not that much of a joke, right? Because there's a little Dr. Smith racial formation, the identity formation ideology. But it's like, for me, it's like race is not biological at all, no matter how much any of us want to believe it, and is a social construct. So it's about like culture and sets of behaviors, and it's also about how you are perceived, right? So it's about how I self-identify and how people identify me from the outside. So that's always a dynamic kind of process. Now, when I drove down there, I kind of forgot the car I was driving. Right, and I didn't think too much about, the specific, I probably should have had on, a solid color, instead of like those kind of plaid, right? But as I'm driving from South City, I'm thinking I'm real black.
Right.
But then when I walked into that joint, it's like to them, I looked completely out of place, because I pull up in it's like the really nice little small light blue cutesy Scion, right? Right? Yeah, it's so cute, and it's like when this gets out of that car, it's like, get out of here. It's like that was how the neighborhood, kind of treated me. And in that moment, no matter how I felt, it was like I was viewed as being whiter. I also felt whiter as this dude was talking to me, and he's talking to me about, that when he told me that he didn't wear jeans and that he only wore slacks and all of that, he was dressed, he clearly worked as a painter, or he was like a manual laborer, right? And I'm like, dude, I got a PhD from WashU. I went to Princeton. And you standing here talking to me in your painter suit and cussing me out about a bologna sandwich while you're buying food from the same joint? And in that moment, so that's the black dialogue that's going on in my head, but because I want to get home safely, not because I don't know whether this dude will actually want to fight or not, I'm just going to I'm going to be Dr. Smith. And in the moment that I thought that I could see myself in that space as Dr. Smith with degrees from Princeton and WashU, it's like, that sounds really white. It's like, that's a pretty white education. And to be a college professor, it's hard to like be that kind of black, when you got that going for you. But there are other places I'll walk into with the same thing, and if it's all white and I'm the only black dude wearing the same getup, right? Or even wearing, some kind of wearing a bow tie and a nice plaid shirt. If I can walk into different places that are much whiter, and I'll be I'll be like a big scary black dude. And in that space, I'll be the blackest person that day, right? And so for me to say that, it's about understanding that all of us have these kind of multiple overlapping identities, and because we're all Americans, there's all this culture that we share, and we all have aspects of we all participate in aspects of culture that are by our traditional standards, white, black, and otherwise, right? We eat Indian food. It's like, so I'm sorry, I babble a lot, but here's one of these weird things that hit me one time. I was in graduate school. Some friends and I were out late. We all wanted something to eat, but nobody wanted to eat the same thing. So we're arguing about where to go, what to get, what to eat, and then at the end of it, we decided we're going to go to the 24/7 Schnucks, when that Schnucks on Big Ben, on Clayton and near Clayton and Big Ben when it opened first, because we couldn't decide what to eat. And then I had this epiphany. I'm like, whoa, we are walking around at 1 in the morning. Somebody wants Indian food, someone wants Mexican food, someone wants burgers, and we can all do that at 1 in the morning, and everybody's happy. And here we are, and I think this group was entirely black, and it's like, and somebody's getting Indian food at 1 o'clock in the morning after a party. And it's like, that's really bizarre, and there are not many places on the planet where that could actually happen. And we're at this new moment in history when that can actually happen. So we're all of us are picking up cultures and cuisines and fashions and musics and literatures that are not simply representative of what we are. And at any given moment, I can take it and reconfigure it and make myself the whitest person in the room. And I bet you I could do that in this room. I'm whiter even sometimes than Audrey. Right? But then by the same token, I could take another package of me and make myself the blackest person in the room. You know, but that's all about how that's all about how our multiple identities overlap, because I'm not just black, I'm not just male, I'm not just straight, I'm not just American, I'm not just a dad. It's like I'm all of these things, and at any given moment, there's some new configuration.
So would you say, like, between, say, a predominantly white community and a predominantly black community, are you comfortable in both? Like, such as the north side, or such as, like, county, or something like that. Would you say you're more comfortable in one society versus another?
No, I would say I am most comfortable. I live in the Shaw neighborhood now, and I absolutely love the Shaw neighborhood, even with the things that have happened recently, because it's a community where I have black neighbors, I have white neighbors, I have older neighbors, I have younger neighbors, I have gay neighbors, I have straight neighbors, there are Asian neighbors. The community is a diverse community, and you know, even though within the last week, a part of that diversity led to tragedy, right? It's like, I love that neighborhood because there were kids like Ron Derek Myers in the neighborhood. I love the neighborhood because you have Flora Place in the neighborhood. I love it because you have Sweet Art in the neighborhood, and all of that. And so for me, it's like, I'd rather not be in a place now. It's like, I feel comfortable in those predominantly black communities because that's where I church on a weekly basis. But I feel comfortable in the predominantly white institutions that I work in on a daily basis. And I feel completely at home here, right? So for me, it's like my best life involves never getting stuck in any one place where either everybody looks like me or I'm the only one that looks like me. And so I spend my life actually trying to avoid those places for long stretches of time. It's like I would never want to live like in those extreme kind of communities that you described, when it's either, you know, pretty like 90-some% black or 90-some% white. I want to find that space in the middle where, because the more that stuff exists, then that allows me on a daily basis to actually relax and be all of the stuff that I am, right? Because in the all-white community, you know, I'll always have to be, hi, Miss B, how's it going? You know, it's like I always have to be that guy, you know, I always have to prove that I'm not threatening. I always have to prove that, you know, I belong in the neighborhood. I have to make sure one of my dogs has a pink leash so that it doesn't look, you know, I don't do spike collars on my dog because I don't want to appear tough. But if in the black neighborhood, I might not be able to, it's like, I go, like, I could not take, my wife and I could not take hummus to a potluck at our church. Right, you know, so, you know, and I want to be in a place where if we have a potluck at the dinner table, there might be collard greens, black-eyed peas, hummus, bean burgers. I mean, it's like where all of that stuff is welcome at the table, and it never has to be any one thing or the other.
Do you think you find that place?
Okay, all right, so here's the big inspirational moral of the story finish, right? Yes, I think and believe we can find that place, and I think we have to make that place everywhere we go. It's like we have to make that place. For me, if it's not happening, like if I'm a member of this community and I look around this community and it ain't enough black happening, then I'm bringing the black, right? You know, if I'm looking around this community and it's not enough white happening, then I'm bringing the white.